Now we're going to talk about critical ethnographies as part 2 on our module on ethnography. And we're talking about critical ethnography. Now we're not talking about critical theory or Marxism in the way of how society looks at it critically. We're talking about the importance of the ethnographer and the importance of an ethnographer approaching your research with respect and appreciation. So it's not a requirement that the ethnographer really appreciate the participants, but that you respect the participants. So the attitude of the ethnographer at the beginning, entering any research, is extremely important. It can be very crucial to how the results are not only analyzed, but even the notes and the observations that are reported, that are what someone sees. So it's just important to be aware of your attitude when you enter any field research, any setting. The wrong attitude can really damage rapport with the participants, with the guide, with the gatekeeper. So you want to build a trust with those, with your participants, with those you're observing, with those that are helping or aware of your research. And as I said, you want to really appreciate the situation. You're not there to correct what's happening, even though it might be difficult. If you notice someone doing something illegal or immoral, that you, as the researcher, you want to jump in, but that's not your role as an ethnographer. You're just observing and reporting what you see and feel and believe. And it's important to stay neutral within, as we talked about earlier. You don't want to go in with a bias. You want to try to remain as neutral as possible and really report what you're seeing, what's happening, what people are saying, how they feel. That's the importance of the ethnographer. Value neutrality. You're going to have empathy for what you see, and especially if you're dealing with children or those that are less fortunate. But you want your values to try to remain as neutral as possible. You don't want to put your beliefs and values on to your participants and to those you're observing. The research questions that you begin with are guided by your own values and by your feelings within the research. And the action of the research will be guided by your research design. That doesn't mean that you might not change it as you go, after observations are met, but it's just very important that you do go with your original ideas, your original research, and not be swayed by what you observe there. The researcher's voice is also very important, and we're talking about not your voice during the observation, but your voice in your report, because you want to stay, again, value neutral in your reporting of your results. And this idea really involves studying as an external investigators, that you're looking at it from the outside, and that's very important when you're doing when you're an ethnographer. You don't, as I said, you don't want to impose your views within the setting. You don't want to take stands one way or another. You want to keep a fairly positive approach to the research. And there's a lot of argument right now against being value neutrality. In the facade of neutrality. But this is an important decision that you need to make as an ethnographer. Research is seldom value neutral. The researcher's position within the topic really can drive the research. It's also very important on the descriptions that the ethnographer uses within your research report. You want to be careful and not use adjectives that are personal and describe something. That's where you want to be as neutral as possible so that the reader can come up with their own conclusions. However, you do want to present subjective disclosures. And if you notice what the author says, he talks about in his reports, he uses I instead of the researcher. So he's giving a voice to himself, and that is what the researcher needs to do. Provides insight into the researcher, whereas the reader can really understand what the researcher was going through, your beliefs, and so you want to bring a voice to yourself within your report. You also allows the researcher to share your experiences with the reader, and that's it will orient the reader to the researcher's perspective. You are the researcher. You're the one doing the work. You're the one observing. So it's important that that's portrayed within your report. Now we're going to talk about what works and why it could fail. Ethnography is different. We've talked about this throughout this PowerPoint and the last one, but it works because you're actually observing and taking in data in a natural habitat. So field work and the natural habitat of your observations it was really important. It's different than any other research forms, and you're bringing a new perspective to a topic. Also, there are benefits to ethnography. You're really immersed in a natural environment, and this allows the research questions that you have begun with to really play out and see how they all interact. Now, of course, we have to look at the reasons that it can fail. There's 4 causes of failure that are identified. And the first one is trying to observe desired actions. And we've talked about this before. That's why it's so important to be neutral. But if you're looking for a certain response, you're looking for certain observations, then therefore you might only report what you expect to see or really look for what you want to see. And by not finding them could actually be a lack of a study opportunity. You want to report what you're seeing, not just what you're not seeing. The next point is the external forces can affect what's on the research. It can affect really even how you do your research or what's taken. Let's say you're observing, you want to, so many days a week you're going to observe a playground. Well, every time you go it's been raining, so therefore people are not showing up. So that can really impact your research. Another failure would be an unreliable guide that you have partnered with, or someone that you've identified, or whoever is your guide within your field setting. If you don't have a rapport with them, you're starting off on the wrong foot in the beginning. The last point for the failure, as we've talked about, this can be very time consuming. So it might, if you don't have the time to really put to this, you're doing a disservice to your own research. And being able to really access the setting is another potential failure. And the research question could change as you conduct the research. And this could be something that if you're within the research and you realize, oh, I'm going to change my research question, that could really lead to failure within the research. And I don't mean adding to your research questions, but if you have a research question and then you say you turn it backwards, and so now you're looking for something because of what you've observed, you really want to stick to your main research question and then decide whether or not you support that or not.